A young woman went on a blind date pretending to be someone else to scare off her suitor. But when she discovered he was her own boss, their lives became intertwined in an unexpected way. What began as an innocent lie turned into a risky agreement that could destroy their careers. But secrets of the heart came to light and both their destinies changed forever in ways no one could have predicted. A story of lies that became truth, of love that blossomed where least expected, and of the courage to fight for what really matters. Get ready because this story will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment on where you are watching from. The October rain in Paris had a way of transforming the city into an impressionist painting. The drops danced on the wet cobblestones, creating golden reflections from the streetlights that mingled with the unmistakable aroma of coffee and fresh bread wafting from the bistros. Claire Dubois adjusted the strap of her vintage leather bag as she crossed Rue Saint-Germain, her footsteps echoing with the hurried rhythm of someone late for an appointment she didn't want to keep. At 28, Claire was the kind of person who couldn't say no to a friend in trouble. Naturally extroverted, honest to the core, and straight as an arrow, she had agreed to replace Elise Moreau on a blind date her friend was desperate to avoid. The plan was simple: arrive at Café de Flore, be deliberately unpleasant, scare the suitor, and spare Elise an awkward afternoon. "I wonder if he'll be wearing a hideous tie," she muttered to herself, pushing open the glass door of the historic café. The interior enveloped her like a warm embrace. French conversations mingled with the clink of porcelain cups, while the rich aroma of espresso danced with hints of chocolate and vanilla from the pastries in the window. Claire scanned the room, searching for anyone who appeared to be waiting. Her eyes landed on a man sitting near the window, watching the rain with a thoughtful expression. He wasn't wearing a hideous tie. In fact, he wasn't wearing a tie at all. His navy blue wool coat was perfectly tailored, and there was something familiar about his profile. Claire's heart stopped for a moment when the man turned around. Alexandre Laurent, her boss, the CEO of the company where she'd worked for 2 years as a marketing assistant. The man she saw every day in the hallways, who conducted meetings with a quiet authority that impressed and intimidated her in equal measure. Alexandra looked up, and their gazes met. For a moment, time seemed frozen. The surprise in his dark eyes perfectly mirrored her own. Claire could hear her own heart pounding as a single question echoed in her mind. How had she ended up on a blind date with her own boss? Claire? Alexandra's voice had a different quality outside the corporate setting. Softer, less formal. "What are you doing here?" She approached the table on legs that seemed to have forgotten how to work. Well, that's kind of complicated to explain." Her natural honesty warred with the awkwardness of the situation. "Actually, you're waiting for Elise Moreau, aren't you?" Understanding slowly dawned on Alexander's face, followed by something that might have been amusement. "And you're here because she asked me to come in her place and, well, scare you." The words were out before she could filter them, and Claire felt heat rise up her neck. "Not that I think you're scary. I mean, you're a little intimidating at work, but not in a bad way, and I really shouldn't be telling my boss that, should I?" To her surprise, Alexandra laughed. A rich, genuine sound she'd never heard in the company hallways. "Please have a seat, and maybe we can pretend, at least for this afternoon, that I'm not your boss." Claire slid into the opposite chair, still processing the surreality of the situation. The rain continued its dance against the windows, creating a cocoon of unexpected intimacy around the table. "So," Alexandra said, signaling to the waiter, "it seems we were both victims of an elaborate setup. Elise can be very persuasive when she wants to avoid something." Claire wrung her hands together, a habit she had when nervous. "She said you seemed too boring and that you needed someone to discourage you." "Boring?" Alexandra arched an eyebrow, and Claire noticed for the first time the small frown lines around his eyes. "Well, that's enlightening." The waiter approached, and Alexandra ordered 2 coffees without consulting Claire, a gesture that, coming from anyone else, might have seemed presumptuous, but which he found strangely comforting from her. "And what would you do if I really was boring?" he asked when they were alone again. Claire studied him for a moment. Outside the formal atmosphere of the company, Alexandra seemed different, more relaxed, more human. "Honestly, I'd probably make up an emergency and run away." "And now?" The question hung in the air between them. Claire realized she didn't want to run away. She wasn't sure what she wanted, but it definitely wasn't this. "Now I'm curious," she admitted. "How does a tech company CEO end up on blind dates?" Alexandra sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "My family has very strong opinions about my personal life, or rather, my lack thereof." Claire felt a pang of understanding. Family pressure. "I completely understand. Does your family also have opinions about your love life?" "My mom calls every week asking if I've met anyone interesting. Like I go to a dating fair every Friday." Claire laughed, surprised by her own candor. "And yours?" "Family dinners have become interrogations about when I'm going to settle down and give them grandchildren." Alexandra grimaced. "Then someone mentioned this arranged meeting and I thought it would at least be an afternoon away from home." The coffee arrived, steaming and aromatic. Claire wrapped her hands around the cup, absorbing the warmth. A crazy idea began to form in her mind. "What if," she said slowly, "we pretended this date worked out?" Alexandra paused with the cup halfway to his lips. "What do you mean?" "Well, you need your family to stop insisting on dating, and I need mine to stop asking about my love life. If we pretended to be dating at least for a while, we'd both gain some peace." "Are you suggesting a fake relationship?" The disbelief in his voice was clear. "Why not? It would be mutually beneficial. Nothing personal, just practical." Alexandra watched her for a long moment, and Claire wondered if she had completely lost her mind. Then slowly, he began to smile. "You know what, Claire? Maybe you're just the kind of non-boring person I need." The following Monday, Claire arrived at the office with the feeling that a secret was shining like neon overhead. Laurent and Associates occupied 3 floors of a modern building in the 16th arrondissement, its glass walls offering spectacular views of the Eiffel Tower. It was an elegant and efficient environment, where the hum of printers mingled with conversations in English and French. "You seem different today," commented Lucien Dupont, Alexandra's personal secretary, as he sorted through stacks of documents in the executive floor reception area. At 35, Lucien was meticulous, discreet, and possessed an almost supernatural ability to anticipate his boss's needs. "Different how?" Claire asked, trying to sound casual as she checked her emails. "I don't know. More radiant?" Lucien studied her curiously. "Did you have a good weekend?" Before Claire could respond, Alexandra's office door opened. He emerged wearing a dark gray suit that accentuated his broad shoulders, carrying a brown leather briefcase. "Good morning, Claire." "Lucien." His greeting was professional, but his eyes lingered on hers for a split second too long. "Claire, I need you to review the materials for this afternoon's presentation. Can you come to my office in 5 minutes?" "Of course, Mr. Laurent." When the door closed behind him, Lucien turned to Claire with a puzzled expression. "There's definitely something different." Alexandra's office was a study in understated elegance. Dark wood furniture, a few strategically placed green plants, and an entire wall dedicated to business books and French literature. The desk was impeccably organized, except for a single framed photo of a family gathered on some beach. "We need to establish some rules," Alexandra said as soon as the door closed. Claire sat in the chair in front of her desk, crossing her legs. "Rules? For our agreement. At work, we maintain absolute professionalism. No special looks, no preferential treatment, nothing that might suggest personal involvement." "I completely agree." Claire picked up a notepad. "And outside of work? We'll need to make some public appearances. Family dinners, some social events. Nothing too elaborate, just enough to maintain credibility." "How long?" Alexandra hesitated. "How about 3 months? Enough time to convince our families we're serious, but not so long that they get their hopes up about future developments." Claire made some notes. "What about exclusivity? I mean, if one of us knows someone, so we're done with the deal. Clean and simple." "Perfect." Claire closed the notebook. "Anything else I should know about you? Embarrassing hobbies, weird phobias, dramatic ex-girlfriends?" Alexandra laughed, and Claire felt a small victory. "I collect vintage mystery novels. I have a strange aversion to olives, and my last girlfriend was 2 years ago. She decided I was emotionally unavailable." "And she was right?" The question came out before Claire could censor herself. Alexandra looked at her with an unreadable expression. Probably, he said finally. What about you? Any ex-boyfriends I should avoid at parties? No one's being dramatic. My last relationship ended 6 months ago. Irreconcilable differences about the future. Claire paused. He wanted to move to the countryside and raise goats. I wanted to stay in Paris and create marketing campaigns. The goats lost. The goats lost. A comfortable silence settled between them. Through the windows, Claire could see Parisians bustling along the sidewalks, each lost in their own world. So, Alexander said, when would you like to meet my family? Dinner at the Laurent's house was scheduled for the following Saturday, in an elegant mansion in the 7th arrondissement that exuded history and tradition. Claire spent the entire week nervously researching the Laurent family online and practicing casual conversation in the mirror. You're acting strange, Elise observed when they met for lunch on Thursday. Her friend was impeccably dressed as always in a blue silk dress that cost more than Claire's monthly salary. Strange how? I don't know. Secretive. Mysterious. Elise picked at her niçoise salad. And speaking of which, how was that blind date? You never told me. Claire nearly choked on her wine. Oh, that was interesting. Interesting bad or interesting good? Interesting. Complicated. Elise arched a perfectly shaped eyebrow. Claire Dubois, you're hiding something from me. I'm not hiding anything, Claire lied, picking at her quiche Lorraine. I'm just still processing it. Was he really that terrible? I knew I should have canceled instead of sending you. No, he wasn't terrible. In fact, he was... Claire searched for the right words. Amazing. Surprising how? Just different than I expected. Elise studied her with narrowed eyes. Will you see him again? Perhaps. Claire. Elise, I promise I'll tell you everything when I have something concrete to tell you, okay? On Saturday, Claire spent 2 hours choosing what to wear. She finally opted for a navy blue midi dress with delicate lace details. Elegant without being pretentious, sophisticated without being over the top. She had studied the Laurent family as if it were a test. Henri Laurent, the patriarch, was a retired businessman who built his empire from a small accounting firm. Marguerite, his wife, came from a traditional Burgundian winemaking family. They had 3 children, Alexandra, the eldest, followed by Isabelle, a pediatrician, and Philippe, an architect living in London. Alexandra picked her up promptly at 7, driving a gray Peugeot that was elegant without being ostentatious. Nervous? He asked as he navigated the streets of Paris. Terrified, Claire admitted. What if they don't like me? What if they realize it's all a lie? They'll like you. Alexander glanced at her quickly. How could they not? Something in the tone of his voice made Claire look at him curiously, but before she could analyze the comment, they arrived at the Laurent house. The mansion was impressive. 3 stories of pale stone with tall windows and a grand entrance flanked by perfectly manicured gardens. Claire's stomach lurched. Remember, Alexandra said as he parked, we're just 2 adults who met under normal circumstances and are exploring a connection. Okay. Normal. Connection. Got it. Henri Laurent was exactly as Claire had imagined. Tall, distinguished, with silver hair and eyes that analyzed everything with sharp intelligence. Marguerite was elegantly beautiful, with a warm smile that immediately relaxed Claire. So you're the mysterious Claire who finally managed to catch my son's eye, Henri said, kissing her hand gallantly. Daddy, Alexander murmured, but he was smiling. Ignore my husband, Marguerite said, linking her arm through Claire's. He thinks he's charming. Come, dear, I'll show you my garden while Alexandra helps with the wine. The garden was a little paradise hidden in the heart of Paris. Roses that exuded sweet perfume, lavender that sighed in the night breeze, and a small herb patch that reminded Claire of her own grandmother's garden. Alexandra told us you worked together, Marguerite said, stopping next to a small fountain where the water bubbled gently. Yes, I work in the marketing department at his company. Claire wrung her hands nervously. I hope this isn't problematic. My dear, love knows no hierarchy. Marguerite smiled. Henri and I met when he was my boss at a small accounting firm. 50 years later, we're still discovering new things about each other. Over dinner, Claire felt herself gradually relax. The Laurent family was welcoming, intelligent, and genuinely interested in getting to know her. They asked questions about her work, her hobbies, her family, and Claire found herself sharing stories she'd forgotten she had. "Alexandra told us you're an excellent marketing strategist," said Isabel, the doctor's sister who had joined them for dinner. "What kind of campaigns do you develop?" "Mostly for tech companies," Claire replied, delicately cutting into her coq au vin. "I like finding ways to make complex concepts accessible to the general public. Like you did with our mental health app campaign," Alexandra added, and Claire looked at him in surprise. She hadn't known he'd paid specific attention to her work on that project. "Oh yes, it was an interesting challenge. How to communicate hope without trivializing serious mental health issues." "And how did you solve it?" asked Henri, clearly interested. Claire found herself explaining her strategy, growing more confident with each word. When she finished, there was a moment of admiring silence. "Fascinating," Henri murmured. "Alexandra, you chose well." Later, as they were leaving, Marguerite pulled Claire into a warm hug. "It was a pleasure meeting you, my dear. I hope to see you again soon." In the car on the way home, a comfortable silence settled between them. "They're wonderful," Claire said finally. "Thank you for including me. Thank you for making this easy. You were perfect." Claire glanced at Alexandra, noticing the way his hands gripped the steering wheel, the strong line of his jaw illuminated by the streetlights. "Just acting my part," she said softly. But something inside her whispered that maybe it wasn't just acting. The first complication arose on Monday morning in the form of Sophie Durand, the human resources director at Laurent and Associados. Sophie was an efficient and observant woman in her early 40s who knew every employee by name and had a knack for spotting shifts in office dynamics. "Claire, can I talk to you for a moment?" Sophie appeared at Claire's table shortly after lunch, carrying a folder and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sure." Claire saved the document she was working on and followed Sophie into a small conference room. The space smelled of new paper and cold coffee, with a limited view of the building's inner courtyard. "I received some interesting comments this morning," Sophie said, sitting down and opening the folder. "It seems you were seen having dinner with Alexandra over the weekend." Claire's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. "Yes, I did." "Claire, do you understand that we have clear policies regarding relationships between employees, especially when there are significant hierarchical differences?" "I completely understand." Claire chose her words carefully. "And I also understand that these policies apply to relationships that could affect the work environment or create conflicts of interest." Sophie studied her. "And you believe your situation doesn't fall into that category?" "I believe I am capable of maintaining absolute professionalism at work, regardless of any personal situation." "And Alexander shares this ability?" "You'd have to ask him." Sophie closed the folder. "Claire, I like you. You're talented, dedicated, and have a bright future at this company. But I need you to understand that you'll be watched very closely from now on. Any sign of favoritism, any suggestion that your position is being influenced by unprofessional factors and will have to take action. I completely understand." When Claire left the conference room, her hands were shaking slightly. She hadn't fully considered the professional ramifications of her arrangement with Alexandra. Now, suddenly, she felt as if she were walking a tightrope, trying to balance a lie that was becoming increasingly complex. "Everything okay?" Lucien asked as she passed the reception desk. His tone was casual, but his eyes showed genuine concern. "Everything's great," Claire lied. "Just boring administrative stuff." That night, Alexandra called her. "I heard you had an interesting conversation with Sophie today." News travels fast. Claire was in her small apartment in Montmartre, preparing a simple dinner of pasta and salad. The kitchen was tiny but cozy, with herbs growing on the windowsill and a charming view of the Parisian rooftops. "Claire, I should have thought of this sooner. If this is causing problems for you at work—" "It's not causing any problems," she interrupted, though she wasn't sure if that was true. "We just need to be even more careful." "Are you sure?" "Because we can end this now, before things get any more complicated." Claire looked out the window, watching the lights come on in the apartments across the street. Families gathering for dinner, couples chatting, people living their real, honest lives. "No," she said finally. "I don't want to end it. We need to be smarter about this." "Okay. And Claire, try. Thank you. for putting up with the pressure. I know it's not easy." After they hung up, Claire sat at the small kitchen table, absently stirring the dough. For the first time since they'd made the deal, she wondered if she really knew what she was getting into. The opportunity came 2 weeks later, in the form of a crucial presentation for a new client. Virtuose Technologies was looking for an agency to launch its newest product line, and Laurent and Associados was competing against 2 other prestigious firms. "I want you to lead the presentation," Alexandra told Claire during a staff meeting on Wednesday morning. The silence in the conference room was almost audible. Claire felt all eyes turned to her, some curious, others clearly skeptical. "Mr. Laurent," said Marcus Beaumont, the senior marketing manager, "perhaps it would be better if I led, considering my experience with large clients." "Claire has a unique perspective on consumer technology," Alexandra replied calmly, "and her innovative strategies are exactly what this client is looking for." Claire could feel the tension in the room. She knew everyone was thinking the same thing. Was she getting this opportunity because of her supposed relationship with Alexandra? "I'd love to lead the presentation," she said, meeting Alexandra's gaze. "But I'd like to work with Marcus as a co-leader. His experience would be invaluable." Marcus looked surprised but nodded. "It would be a pleasure to work with you, Claire." For the next 3 days, Claire practically lived in the office. She studied every aspect of Virtuose Technologies, analyzed their previous campaigns, researched their competitors, and developed a strategy that was both bold and carefully calculated. Lucien became an unexpected ally, bringing her coffee when she worked late and offering insights into customer preferences based on his experience with Alexandra. "You know," he said Thursday night as Claire was organizing the final slides, "I've never seen Alexander so involved in a presentation he wasn't giving himself." "What do you mean?" "He asked for updates 3 times today. Normally, he trusts the team and waits for results." Claire stopped typing. "Do you think he's micromanaging because of us? Or because he truly believes in your potential and wants to make sure you succeed?" Lucien smiled. "It can be hard to tell the difference, especially when you're emotionally involved." "I'm not emotionally involved," Claire protested automatically. "Of course not," Lucien said, but his tone was gentle, not sarcastic. The presentation was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. Claire arrived at the office an hour early, wearing her most confident suit, a dark gray ensemble that made her feel powerful and professional. She reviewed her notes one last time, practiced the transitions between slides, and tried to calm the nerves dancing in her stomach. The main conference room had been transformed for the occasion. The long mahogany table gleamed under the overhead lights, and the leather chairs were perfectly aligned. Alexandra was present but sat discreetly at the back of the room, making it clear that this was Claire's presentation. Virtuose's executives arrived punctually. 3 men and 1 woman, all exuding the confidence that comes with success and wealth. Claire greeted each one individually, noting details she had researched about them. Catherine Moreau, the CEO, known for her passion for sustainability. Jean-Pierre Dubois, the marketing director who had started out as a programmer. Robert Francais, the CFO, renowned for his rigorous, data-driven decisions. "Good morning," Claire began, her voice clear and confident. "Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our vision for the launch of the Virtuoso Next line." Over the next 40 minutes, Claire guided the audience through her strategy. She had identified a specific niche in the market: young professionals who valued both technology and social responsibility. Her proposed campaign utilized authentic storytelling, partnerships with digital influencers who shared the company's values, and an experiential marketing approach that would allow consumers to interact with products in meaningful environments. "The key," she explained, clicking to a slide showing demographic data, "isn't just selling products. It's creating a community of people who see technology as a tool for a better future." The questions came quickly and sharply. Catherine wanted to know about sustainability metrics. Jean-Pierre questioned the viability of the proposed partnerships. Robert demanded detailed financial projections. Claire answered each question with solid data and concrete examples. She had prepared for every possible objection, but most importantly, she genuinely believed in the strategy she was presenting. "Impressive," Catherine said when the presentation ended. "You clearly understood our brand and our values." "More than that," Jean-Pierre added, You understood our market. As the clients left, promising a decision by the end of the next week, Claire felt simultaneously euphoric and exhausted. Alexandra approached, and for a moment she completely forgot that other people were watching. "You were brilliant," he said, and there was something in his eyes that made Claire's heart race. "We were brilliant," she corrected, gesturing to Marcus and the rest of the team. But that night, when Alexandra called her to congratulate her personally, Claire realized that the line between her professional agreement and her personal feelings was becoming dangerously blurred. The call came Monday morning. Virtuoso had chosen Laurent and Associates. Claire was drinking coffee in the office's small kitchen when Lucien rushed up to her with the news, his eyes shining with excitement. "They said your presentation was exactly what they were looking for," he reported, almost skipping. "Alexandra is in a meeting, but he asked me to tell you right away." Claire felt a surge of pride and relief, but also something more complicated. The realization that she had proven herself, but now she would face even greater scrutiny about her motivations and qualifications. The team celebration was held at Le Procope, a historic restaurant in the 6th arrondissement that Alexandra had reserved for the occasion. The establishment, with its dark wood walls and portraits of famous writers, exuded history and tradition. Claire sat between Marcus and a colleague from the design department, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy while observing Alexandra at the other end of the long table. The Bordeaux wine flowed freely, and the conversations became more lively as the evening wore on. Claire was telling a funny story about a previous client when she felt her phone vibrate. A message from Alexandra. "I need to talk to you. It's important." She glanced in his direction, but Alexandra was deep in a seemingly serious conversation with Marcus about future strategies. Claire tried to join in the conversations around her, but a sense of unease grew in her chest. 20 minutes later, Alexandra stood discreetly and nodded to Claire, almost imperceptibly toward the exit. She waited a few minutes before excusing herself, claiming an important call. Outside the restaurant, the Parisian night was clear and cool. The lights from nearby cafes cast golden pools on the sidewalk, and the aroma of roasting chestnuts from a street vendor wafted through the air. "What happened?" Claire asked as she approached Alexandra, who was standing under a streetlight, his hands in his coat pockets. "I got a call from my mom this afternoon." His expression was tense. "Apparently, she's so impressed with you that she's planning an engagement dinner." Claire felt her blood run cold. "An engagement dinner? But we're not. Exactly. And there's more." Alexandra ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Claire had learned to recognize as a sign of stress. "She's already invited her entire extended family. Uncles, cousins, close family friends. She's planning for the end of the month." "Oh no." Claire leaned against the cold wall of the building. "This is getting out of hand. And there's something else you need to know." Alexandra hesitated. "This morning, Sophie Durand contacted me. Apparently there are rumors circulating about favoritism. Some colleagues are questioning whether your promotion to lead the Virtuoso presentation was based on merit or other considerations." Claire felt like she'd been punched in the gut. All the pride she'd felt at the performance's success turned to shame and anger. "You think I didn't deserve to lead the presentation?" His voice came out sharper than he intended. "Of course you deserved it. You were brilliant, and the client chose our company because of your work." Alexandra approached. "But perception is as important as reality in corporate environments. So what are you suggesting? That we end our act?" Alexandra was silent for a long moment, watching a young couple walking hand in hand down the street, laughing at some shared joke. "I don't know," he said finally. "This has turned out to be more complicated than any of us anticipated." Claire studied him in the yellowish light of the street lamp. There was something different in his expression, a vulnerability she rarely saw. "Alexander, can I ask you a direct question?" "Always." "Did you give me the opportunity to lead the presentation because of our agreement, or because you genuinely believed I was the best person for the job?" He looked her straight in the eye. "Because you were the best person for the job, no question." "Then let's not let rumors and gossip dictate our decisions." Claire felt a familiar determination building in her chest. "If you want to end our agreement for other reasons, I understand. But we won't do it because of what other people think." "What about my mother's engagement dinner?" Claire laughed, a sound that surprised them both. Well, that's an interesting problem, isn't it? In that moment, standing on the Parisian sidewalk with the world moving on around them, Claire realized that her feelings for Alexandre had become dangerously real, and from the look in his eyes, she suspected he might be facing the same realization. The office the next morning felt different to Claire. She noticed the furtive glances, the conversations that stopped abruptly as she passed, the way some colleagues avoided eye contact. The triumph of the presentation had turned sour, tainted by suspicion and speculation. Lucien was organizing papers when she arrived, but his usual smile looked forced. "Good morning, Claire. How was the rest of the celebration last night?" "It was good." She sat at her desk, turning on her computer. "Lucien, can I ask you a question?" "Of course. Are people talking about me and Alexander?" Lucien stopped sorting his papers and looked around to make sure they were alone. "Some people are curious about the nature of your relationship." "Curious how?" "Well, you were seen together outside of work and then you received a significant opportunity. Some people are jumping to conclusions." Claire sighed. "Conclusions that could harm my career, or they could dissipate if you continued to prove yourself through work." Lucien sat in the chair next to her desk. "Claire, can I give you some advice? Based on years of observing office politics? Please. The best defense against gossip is unquestionable competence. Keep doing exceptional work, maintain absolute professionalism here in the office, and eventually people will find something else to talk about. What if Alexander and I really are involved?" Lucien studied her with shrewd eyes. "Then you'll have to decide if it's worth the risk." That afternoon, Claire was working on the initial development of the Virtuose campaign when Elise showed up unannounced. Her friend seemed different, less polished, more genuine somehow. "I need to talk to you," Elise said, sitting in the visitor's chair next to Claire's desk. "Elise, I'm working. It's about Alexandre Laurent." Claire stopped typing. "What about him?" "I know you're dating him." Claire's heart raced. "How did you—" "Because I did my research after our blind date." Elise leaned forward. "Claire, you need to know a few things about the Laurent family." "What kind of things?" "Alexandra had a serious relationship 2 years ago. Camille Rousseau. She worked in marketing for a competing company." Claire felt a tightness in her chest. And it ended because the Laurent family didn't approve of her. They thought she was unsuitable, too much ambition, too humble of origins. Elise paused. "Claire, they may be charming and welcoming on the surface, but they have very specific expectations about who is suitable to marry Alexandra." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're my friend and I don't want to see you get hurt." Elise touched Claire's hand. "And because, well, I've been thinking a lot about that blind date I avoided. Maybe I should have gone." "Elise, no, let me tell you. I've spent my whole life avoiding anything that might be uncomfortable or challenging. You went in my shoes and found something real. It made me realize I'm wasting my life." Claire looked at her friend in surprise. It was rare to see Elise so thoughtful, so vulnerable. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I know I want to stop running away from things." Ella stood up. "Just be careful, okay? Families like the Laurents can be complicated." That night, Claire was preparing dinner in her apartment when Alexandre called. "My mother wants to get to know you better," he said without preamble. "She suggested you come have lunch with her tomorrow." "Just the two of us?" "Just the two of you." Claire sat down heavily in the small armchair in her living room. "Alexandre, Elise told me about Camille Rousseau today." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "What exactly did she tell you?" "That you had a serious relationship that ended because your family didn't approve of you." "It's more complicated than that." "Then explain the complication to me." Alexandra sighed. "Camille and we had problems that had nothing to do with my family. But it's true that they didn't make things easy." "What kind of problems?" "Incompatible ambition. She wanted me to leave the family business and start something new with her. When I refused, she accused me of being controlled by my parents. And she was right? Maybe. I don't know." His voice sounded tired. "Claire, do you still want to go to lunch with my mom?" Claire looked around her small apartment, the plants she lovingly tended, the books scattered on the coffee table, the photo of her and her parents on the bookshelf. It was a simple life, but it was hers. The question was she willing to complicate it further? "Yes," she said finally. "I want to go." Marguerite Laurent's chosen restaurant was the kind of place that whispered of understated elegance. Le Grand Véfour, with its historic frescoes and crystals that caught the morning light like jewels. Claire arrived 5 minutes early, wearing a simple but well-cut dress, trying to project a confidence she didn't quite feel. Marguerite was already seated at a table near the window, studying the menu with the concentration of someone who had learned to make careful choices in all aspects of life. She looked up as Claire approached, and her smile was warm, but Claire detected something more calculating behind it. "Honey, I'm so glad you could come." Marguerite kissed her cheeks in the traditional French greeting. "I hope you don't mind my choice of restaurant. It's one of my favorites for important conversations." "Important conversations?" Claire sat down, accepting the menu the waiter offered. "Well, when a woman is interested in getting to know the person who captured her son's heart better, I'd say it's quite important." Marguerite studied Claire over the menu. "You seem nervous, my dear." "A little," Claire admitted, deciding that honesty would be her best strategy. "There's no need. This is just a conversation between two women who want the best for Alexander." They ordered. Claire opted for the grilled salmon, Marguerite chose the duck, and then came the gentle but relentless interrogation. "Tell me about your family, dear." Claire spoke about her parents. Her father, a high school teacher, and her mother, a retired nurse. She spoke about her modest but happy childhood in a Paris suburb, and how she worked during university to help pay for her studies. "I admire your work ethic," Marguerite said, delicately cutting into her duck. "Alexandra has always been drawn to determined people. Like Camille Rousseau?" The question came out before Claire could censor herself. Marguerite paused with her fork halfway to her mouth, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Ah, you heard about Camille?" "Alexandra mentioned that you two had a serious relationship." "Yes, they did." Marguerite put her fork back on her plate. "Camille was intense, very ambitious, very determined to shape Alexandra according to her vision of what he should be. And what's the problem with ambition? None, when balanced with other qualities. Camille wanted Alexandra to abandon everything we'd built as a family, to reject the responsibilities that come with his name and position." Marguerite took a sip of her white wine. "Tell me, Claire, if you and Alexandra had differences about the future, how would you resolve them?" Claire felt she was being tested. "I believe in compromise, in finding solutions that honor both people's values and goals. What if there was no possible compromise solution? So, then maybe we weren't compatible in the long run." Marguerite smiled, and this time it seemed genuine. An honest and mature answer. "Can I ask a question too?" Claire felt a sudden surge of courage. "Of course. What do you really think of me? Not the social niceties, but your honest opinion." Marguerite studied her for a long moment, and Claire could almost see the calculations going on behind her intelligent eyes. "I think you are intelligent, authentic, and genuinely caring toward Alexandra. I also think you are hiding something." Claire's heart raced. "Hiding something?" "There's an artificiality in some of your gestures together, as if you're aware of being watched." Marguerite leaned forward. "Claire, can I give you some advice? Please. If you really care about my son, be completely honest with him, and with yourself. Relationships based on pretenses rarely survive the long term." As they left the restaurant, Marguerite linked her arm through Claire's as they walked through the sunny streets. "Despite my concerns," she said, "I like you, Claire. There's a quiet strength in you that I think would be good for Alexander. Thank you for your honesty. And you? Do you like him? Really?" Claire stopped walking. The question, phrased so directly, forced her to confront feelings she'd been avoiding examining too closely. "Yes," she said softly. "I like him. I really do." "Then maybe it's time you guys stopped pretending and started being honest about it." The crisis arrived in the form of an article in Le Figaro's gossip column. Lucien encountered it first, arriving at the office on Tuesday morning with the newspaper tucked under his arm and a worried expression. "You need to see this," he told Claire, placing the newspaper open on her desk. The Parisian Life column featured a blurry photo of Claire and Alexandre leaving the restaurant after his lunch with Marguerite. The caption read, "Young CEO Alexandre Laurent and his new protégée Claire Dubois have been spotted on multiple romantic dates." Sources suggest Ms. Dubois recently received a significant promotion within Laurent's company. Coincidence? Claire felt the blood drain from her face. Oh no. It gets worse, Lucien said softly. The article mentions you working together and suggests there may be irregularities. Before Claire could respond, Alexandre appeared at the entrance to the work area, holding a copy of the same newspaper. His expression was grim. My office. Now. Claire followed him, feeling the stares of all her colleagues. When the door closed behind them, Alexandre tossed the newspaper onto his desk. This is a disaster. Alexander, The board will want an explanation. Sophie has already called 3 times. And my mother. He ran his hands through his hair. My mother is furious because she thought we were hiding the seriousness of the relationship. Claire sat down heavily. What are we going to do? I don't know. If we admit it's fake, we'll look ridiculous and manipulative. If we insist it's real, you'll face even more scrutiny about your position here. What if it wasn't fake? Alexandre stopped walking. What do you mean? Claire took a deep breath, finding courage she didn't know she had. What if we stopped pretending and admitted this became real? For a moment, there was complete silence between them. Alexandre looked at her as if he were seeing her for the first time. Claire, I know that wasn't the plan. I know it makes everything more complicated, but... She stood, walking to the window that overlooked the inner courtyard. I can't pretend these are just acting feelings anymore. Alexandre approached, standing behind her. Claire could feel the warmth of his presence, the subtle scent of his perfume. Do you have any idea how complicated that would make things? I can see how lying about this is complicating things. What if it doesn't work out? What if we find out we were better as whatever we were before? Claire turned to face him. Then at least we'll know we tried something real instead of living an elaborate lie. Alexandre studied her, and Claire saw the exact moment he made his decision. He stepped closer, lifting his hand to touch her face. Claire, The door opened abruptly. Sophie Durand entered, stopping suddenly when she saw how close they were. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but her tone indicated she wasn't excusing anything. But we need to talk. Immediately. The meeting in the conference room was formal and tense. Sophie had brought a representative from the board, Jean-Claude Moreau, a 60-year-old man with a reputation for fairness but ruthlessness. Let's get straight to the point, Jean-Claude said, placing the newspaper on the table. This situation is creating a problematic perception about the company's integrity. Mr. Moreau, Alexandre began, I can assure you that... Alexandre, I appreciate your loyalty, but this is not a situation that can be resolved with insurance. Jean-Claude turned to Claire. Miss Dubois, do you understand the delicate position you are in? I understand perfectly. Then you also understand that we need full transparency about the nature of your relationship and how it may have influenced professional decisions. Claire looked at Alexandre, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Mr. Moreau, Alexandre and I developed feelings for each other. But I can assure you that this did not influence any professional decision. Every opportunity I received was based on merit. And can you prove it? I can prove it through my work. The presentation for Virtuos, which you praised, was developed entirely by me, based on my research and strategy. Jean-Claude studied her. What if we asked you to transfer to another department or even another company to avoid future conflicts of interest? Claire felt like she'd been punched in the gut. If that's the company's decision, I'd respect it. That won't be necessary, Alexandre said firmly. If there's a problem with perception, then I'll step away from decisions involving the marketing department. Alexander, Sophie protested, that would significantly affect your ability to lead. So perhaps it's time to promote Claire to a position where she reports directly to the board, removing any appearance of conflict. Jean-Claude raised his eyebrows. Are you suggesting we create a marketing director position specifically to address this situation? I'm suggesting that we recognize Claire's exceptional talent and promote her based on merit, so that her competence can no longer be questioned. Claire looked at Alexandre in shock. He was risking his own position to protect hers. It's an interesting proposal, Jean-Claude murmured, but we'd need unanimous approval from the board. Then let's summon her, Alexandre said. Today. The board meeting was scheduled for 4 p.m. Claire spent the intervening hours preparing a detailed presentation on her qualifications, contributions to the company, and vision for the marketing department's future. Her hands shook slightly as she organized the slides, but her determination was iron. Lucien appeared with a cup of tea and an encouraging smile. Alexandre is in the conference room reviewing financial figures to support his proposal. Lucien, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think I'm being naive? Trying to mix work and feelings? Lucien sat in the chair beside her desk. Claire, in 10 years of working with Alexandre, I've never seen him as alive as he has been since you started spending time together. Real or fake, you've brought something back into his life. What if I don't get the promotion? What if management decides I'm a liability? Then you will find another opportunity. But don't underestimate your own worth. The main conference room was intimidatingly formal when Claire entered. 5 board members were seated around the long mahogany table, including Jean-Claude and a woman Claire recognized as Marie-France Dubois, the CFO. Alexandre was seated separately, clearly indicating he would not be involved in the decision. Miss Dubois, Jean-Claude began, you have 15 minutes to convince us that you deserve the position of marketing director, regardless of any personal circumstances. Claire got up, activated the projector, and began. Over the past 2 years, I've contributed to a 35% increase in sales through innovative marketing strategies. His opening slides showed clear graphs and data. The campaign I developed for Virtuos not only secured the contract, but set a new standard for how we approach technology clients. She guided the board through every significant project she had led or contributed to. The digital campaign for the sustainability startup that resulted in a 200% increase in brand awareness. The rebranding strategy for the cosmetics client that generated national press coverage. The market analysis that identified an untapped opportunity in the medical technology sector. But what I'm proposing goes beyond what I've already accomplished, Claire continued, her confidence growing with each word. I see opportunities to expand our presence in the European market, develop strategic partnerships with authentic digital influencers, and create campaigns that not only sell products, but also build communities. Marie-France leaned forward. These are ambitious ideas. How do you plan to implement them with our current budget? Claire had prepared for this question, through creative partnerships and maximizing existing resources. For example, she clicked to the next slide, which outlined a detailed plan for a collaborative campaign that would cost 40% less than traditional methods, but promised 60% more engagement. The questions came quickly after her presentation. They questioned her experience, her plans for managing a larger team, and her vision for future growth. Claire answered each question with solid data and concrete examples. One last question, Jean-Claude said. How would you handle the perception that your promotion is related to your personal relationship with our CEO? Claire took a deep breath. Being so exceptional at my job that no one can question whether I earned the position, and being transparent about the fact that although Alexandre and I have developed personal feelings, my professional competence exists independently of that. What if we had to choose between your career and your relationship? The question hung in the air like a suspended sword. Claire looked at Alexandre, who was tense in his chair. I hope it never comes to that, she said finally. But if it did, well, you'd have to fire me. Because I'm not going to choose between being a competent professional and being a woman who can have a real relationship. A stunned silence fell over the room. Claire could hear her own heartbeat. Thank you, Miss Dubois, Jean-Claude said finally. We will deliberate and give our decision tomorrow morning. When Claire left the conference room, her legs felt like jelly. Alexandre was waiting for her in the hallway. You were amazing, he said softly. Do you think it worked? I think you've done all you can. Now we just have to wait. That night they went to dinner at a small bistro in the Marais, an intimate place with low lights and the kind of atmosphere that invited honest conversation. For the first time since their initial agreement, they spoke like two real people exploring something genuine between them. If I get the promotion, Claire said, delicately cutting into her coq au vin, how would that change us? Honest? I don't know. Alexandre swirled the wine in his glass. But I know I want to find out. What if your family doesn't approve? Then they'll have to learn to deal with it. He reached across the table, touching her hand. Claire, these past few months, even when we were pretending, You've brought something into my life that I didn't know I was missing. What? Spontaneity. Joy. The feeling that I can still surprise myself. Claire laced her fingers with his. You changed my life too. You taught me that I can be ambitious without sacrificing who I am. So regardless of what happens tomorrow, Claire agreed. We'll figure it out together. The call came at 8 in the morning. Claire was making coffee in her small kitchen, watching the city awaken through the window, when her phone rang. Claire? It was Jean-Claude Moreau's voice. Can you come to the office early today? I'd like to speak with you before regular business hours begin. Sure. Can I give you an hour? Perfect. The ride to the office felt simultaneously eternal and too fast. Claire had chosen a navy suit that made her feel confident and professional, but her hand still trembled slightly as she applied lip gloss in the elevator mirror. Jean-Claude was waiting for her in the conference room, along with Marie-France and 2 other board members. The atmosphere was solemn, but not hostile. Claire, have a seat, Jean-Claude said, gesturing to a chair. First, I want to say that your presentation yesterday was impressive. We rarely see such preparation and strategic vision from someone so young. Thanks. That said, the situation is complex. Her competence is not in question, but we need to consider the broader implications of promoting her under these circumstances. Claire's heart sank. I see. So, Marie-France leaned forward. We decided to offer you a choice. Claire arched her eyebrows. A choice? Option 1. You accept the position of marketing director, but Alexandra formally steps away from all decisions related to your department. You would report directly to me, and any personal relationship between you would be discouraged until you establish your reputation in the new position. Claire felt her stomach churn. What about option 2? Option 2, you accept a transfer to our London office where you would lead the expansion of the marketing department into the UK market. It would be a comparable promotion, but it would allow your relationship with Alexandra to continue without creating internal conflicts. London, Claire repeated, processing the implications. It's an exceptional opportunity, added another board member. We would essentially be creating a new division of the company under his leadership. Do I need time to think? Sure, but we need an answer by the end of the week. When Claire left the conference room, her legs felt unsteady. Alexandra was waiting for her in the hallway, studying her expression with anxious eyes. How it was. Claire explained the 2 options as they walked to his office. Alexandra closed the door and leaned against it, running his hands through his hair. London, he murmured. It would be the end of any chance of finding out what we really have, Claire finished for him. Not necessarily. Long-distance relationships can work. Alexander, let's be honest. We've only just begun to explore this. A long-distance relationship would be impossible at this stage. They were silent for a moment, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Claire, I can't make that choice for you. I know. But can I ask you what you want? Alexandra looked at her with an intensity that made her heart race. I want you to stay. I want us to accept the temporary professional separation and see where it takes us. Even if it means complicating your position in the company. Especially for this. Because if I'm willing to complicate my life for you, maybe it means something important. That afternoon, Claire met Elise at a cafe in the Latin Quarter. Her friend seemed different, less polished, more genuine, as if undergoing her own transformation. So what are you going to do? Elise asked, absently stirring her café au lait. Honestly? I don't know. Logically, London makes sense. It's an incredible opportunity. And emotionally? Claire sighed. Emotionally, I want to stay and fight for what Alexander and I could have had. Then why are you hesitating? Because I'm afraid I'm being naive. That I'm risking my career on something that might not work out. Elise studied her. Claire, can I tell you something? About why I really avoided that blind date? Of course. It wasn't because I thought it would be boring. It was because I was afraid to really connect with someone. Elise paused. I spent my whole life avoiding emotional risks, and look where that got me. At 29, alone and wondering what would happen if I actually tried something real. And now? I'm starting therapy now, and I've considered volunteering with an organization that helps young women. Small steps, but real steps. Elise touched Claire's hand. What I'm trying to say is, don't be like I was. If you have a chance at something real, fight for it. That night, Claire walked along the banks of the Seine, watching the city lights reflect on the dark water. Elise's words echoed in her mind, mingling with her own doubts and hopes. His phone rang. It was Alexandre. "Where are you?" "Walking near the Pont Neuf. Can I meet you?" 15 minutes later, Alexandre appeared, slightly out of breath from running. They walked together in silence for a few minutes, taking in the beauty of Paris at night. "I've made a decision," Claire said finally. Alexandre stopped walking. "And? I will accept the position here, on their terms." "Claire, are you sure?" "I'm sure I want to find out what we are when we stop pretending and start being real." She turned to face him. "But I have one condition." "Which? If we do this, we do it right. No secret meetings, no lies about who we are. If we're going to be together, let's really be together." Alexandra smiled, and Claire realized she hadn't seen him smile like that, with genuine, carefree joy, since she'd known him. "I think I can agree with that." He stepped closer, lifting his hands to cup her face. "Claire, can I kiss you for real this time?" "I was waiting for you to ask." The kiss was everything Claire had imagined, and more. Soft and intense at the same time, charged with weeks of pent-up tension and hope. When they broke apart, they were both breathing heavily. "So," Alexander said, "I guess we're now officially a royal couple." "I guess so," Claire laughed. "How strange. Good weird or bad weird?" "Definitely good weird." 3 months later, Claire was in her new office, a sleek space on the same floor as the boardroom, with a spectacular view of the Eiffel Tower. The walls still smelled of fresh paint, and she was putting the finishing touches on her move when Lucien appeared at the door. "How are you feeling, Principal Dubois?" he asked with a smile. "It still feels surreal," Claire admitted, adjusting a painting on the wall. "Sometimes I find myself waiting for someone to come along and tell me it was all a mistake." "Well, if it's any consolation, your first presentation to the board last week was brilliant. The European expansion project you proposed has everyone excited." Claire smiled. The last 3 months had been intense but rewarding. Working directly with Marie-France had proved an enriching experience, and Claire had discovered that she enjoyed the added responsibility that came with her new position. "And how are things with you-know-who?" Lucien asked, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "With Alexandre?" Claire laughed. "You can use his name, Lucien. Everyone knows we're together now." "It's true. I'm still getting used to the transparency." And it was true that everyone knew. After accepting the position, Claire and Alexandra had been completely open about their relationship. It had been uncomfortable at first, the curious glances, the whispered comments. But gradually, as Claire repeatedly proved her competence, people had begun to accept that maybe, just maybe, two talented professionals could fall in love and still maintain their integrity at work. "Actually," Lucien continued, "I have news of my own." "Oh? Elise and I? Well, we've been hanging out." Claire looked at him with surprise and joy. "Lucien, that's wonderful. It's weird, actually. She reached out to me a few weeks ago, said you'd mentioned I was interesting and underrated. Apparently, she decided she wanted to meet more substantive people. And we discovered we have so much more in common than either of us imagined." Lucien smiled, and Claire noticed a new sparkle in his eyes. Who knew someone who seemed to have it all together could feel as lost as someone who'd always hidden in the shadows? Sometimes the best connections come from the most unexpected places. That night, Claire and Alexandra had dinner at her house, something they'd started doing regularly since officially becoming a couple. Alexandra was cooking ratatouille, while Claire prepared a salad, and there was something delightfully domestic about the scene. "My mom called today," Alexandre said, stirring the vegetables in the pan. "And? She wants you to come over for dinner on Sunday. Officially this time." "Officially?" "As my girlfriend, not as someone I'm pretending to date." Alexandre smiled. "Apparently she always knew there was something real between us, even when we thought we were pretending." "Mothers always know," Claire said, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "And how do you feel about that? About officially introducing you to the family?" Alexander turned in his arms, terrified and excited in equal measure. "Why terrified?" "Because that makes it real. Official. There's no going back." Claire studied him. Do you want a ride? No, definitely not. He kissed her forehead. And you? I want to move forward. To all the places we didn't know we wanted to go. They ate at the small kitchen table, talking about future plans, the expansion of Claire's marketing department, the possibility of Alexandra finally taking a real vacation, the larger apartment they were considering looking at together. Claire, Alexandra said as they were finishing dinner, can I ask you a question? Always. Do you regret it? How it all started? With the lie? Claire thought for a moment. You know, it's funny. At first I felt guilty for not being honest, but now, I think maybe we needed the protection of lies to find out the truth. Like this? If we had tried from the beginning, with all the pressure of work and expectations, we might never have discovered who we really are together. Staging gave us space to explore without fear. So you're saying that lying was educational? Claire laughed. I'm saying that sometimes the winding path takes us exactly where we need to be. A year after the blind date that changed everything, Claire found herself back at Café de Flore. This time, she wasn't nervous or trying to scare anyone. She was waiting for Alexandra, who had mysteriously suggested they meet there to celebrate a special birthday. The café was exactly as she remembered, French conversations mingling with the clink of porcelain, the rich aroma of coffee dancing with hints of chocolate. But Claire felt completely different. A year of professional growth, of real relationships, of self-discovery had transformed the insecure woman who had once pretended to be someone else. Her marketing department had exceeded all expectations, leading the company to its best financial performance in 5 years. More importantly, Claire had earned the respect of her colleagues based purely on her competence. Whispers of favoritism had turned into genuine admiration for her achievements. Alexandra arrived exactly on time, but he seemed different too. More relaxed, more happy. Claire's professional success had allowed him to focus on other areas of the company, and he had discovered a passion for sustainable development that was transforming the direction of Laurent and Associados. Sorry I'm late, he said, kissing her cheek before sitting down. Investor meeting ran longer than expected. Good news? Very good. They approved our renewable energy project. Alexandra smiled. But we'll talk about that later. Today is about us. The waiter approached, the same man who had served them a year before. He recognized them and smiled. The same old coffees. Actually, Alexandra said, champagne today. We're celebrating. When they were alone, Claire studied Alexandra's face. There was something different in his expression, a restrained energy she couldn't quite place. So what exactly are we celebrating? A year since two people met here under completely false circumstances and discovered something completely real. When you put it like that, it almost seems magical. It was magical. Alexandra reached across the table, intertwining his fingers with hers. Claire, this year, you've transformed my life in ways I didn't even know were possible. You transformed mine too. It taught me that it's possible to be ambitious and authentic at the same time. That success doesn't mean sacrificing who you are. Claire felt tears sting her eyes. Alexander, let me finish. He took a deep breath. You taught me that true love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone who makes you want to be the best version of yourself. The champagne arrived, but Alexandra didn't touch his glass. Instead, he rose from his chair, and to Claire's complete shock, knelt beside the table. Claire Dubois, he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Would you like to stop pretending to be my girlfriend and start being my wife? The entire cafe seemed to fall silent. Claire could hear her own heartbeat as she stared at the ring. A classic solitaire that was elegant without being ostentatious, perfect in its simplicity. Alexander, she whispered, are you sure? I've never been so sure of anything in my life, even if it means more complications, more scrutiny, more people questioning our motives, especially for this. Because if we're going to face all these things together, I want it to be as partners in everything. Claire looked around the cafe, noticing the warm smiles of the other customers watching the scene. A year ago, she would have felt embarrassed by the attention. Now she felt only joy. Yes, she said, and her voice came out louder than she intended. Yes, I want to be your wife. The cafe erupted in applause when Alexandra slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her. It was perfect, not because it was a movie scene, but because it was genuinely theirs. Later, walking hand in hand through the streets of Paris, Claire reflected on the journey that had brought them there. "You know," she said, stopping near the Pont Neuf, where they had made the decision to try something real, "I still can't believe it all started with a lie." "Maybe it wasn't a lie," Alexander suggested. "Maybe it was a prophecy. Like this? Maybe subconsciously we both knew there was something real there, even when we thought we were pretending." Claire considered this. "Do you think the heart knows before the mind? I think sometimes we need the protection of denial to explore possibilities that scare us too much to face directly." They stood in the middle of the bridge, watching the lights of Paris reflect on the Seine. The city stretched out around them like a fairy tale, but Claire knew the true magic wasn't in the scenery. It was in the journey they'd taken together. "So," Alexandre said, "what's next for Principal Dubois and her fiancé?" "Well, first we have to tell our families. Your mother will want to plan a wedding that rivals a state event. And your parents. You'll be shocked that I got a man who cooks ratatouille better than my mother." They laughed, and Claire realized how easy it was to laugh with Alexandra. How easy everything had become once they stopped fighting their feelings. "Claire," Alexandre said softly, "thank you." "Why?" "For going on that blind date. For accepting that crazy deal. For being brave enough to admit it when it became real. For teaching me that true love is worth any hassle." Claire leaned in to kiss him, savoring the moment and everything it represented. When they broke apart, she smiled. "Thank you for being someone worth knowing." As they walked back home, the first of many homes they would share, Claire reflected on how strange and wonderful life could be. A year ago, she had gone to a cafe to scare a stranger. Now she was engaged to the man who had become her best friend, biggest supporter, and true love. Sometimes, Claire reflected, the best endings start with the most unlikely beginnings. And sometimes, when you stop searching for perfect love and start building something real with the right person, you discover that perfect was there all along, not in fate, but in the daily choice of choosing each other, complications and all. That night, as they planned their future together, Claire knew with certainty that she had found something no amount of acting could match. A love that was completely, authentically real. And that, she thought as she fell asleep in Alexander's arms, was the best twist of all.